On today's podcast, we talk with one of our first state champions of 2020, head football coach at Pine-Richland High School, Eric Kasperowicz. Eric, it's great to have you back here on the podcast.
Hey, love being here, Keith. Thanks for having me back, and it's nice having a little break now. We just finished up about 11 days ago, and I'm already bored to death. So good to be back talking football.
Yeah, I mean, a coach's work is never done, right? You always say you're going to take a little bit of time, enjoy things, and then you find yourself, thinking about things and planning things. And, we're already into clinic season and, all those things start to happen. It just continues on and on. But, congratulations again. Second state championship in 3 tries here. You guys are doing a great job over there at Pine-Richland.
Yeah, thanks. It's special, man. Great group of kids, and second one that we've had been lucky enough to win. And in 17 we won. We had some, Phil Dracovic, high level quarterback, and that was a special group. But this group was special in its own right, where we didn't have a Power 5 kid, right? We just had a bunch of really good high school football players. A couple kids are going to play Division II, some maybe small Division I. Maybe a max score here or there. But point is, it's just a great group of kids, played together all their lives. I know you're from Avon, and reminds me a lot of that community. Just kids that have played football together since they were in youth football, grew up throwing the ball to each other out in the yard, and then finally to come together and be able to culminate that with a state championship is so rewarding to see. The looks on their faces after we won.
And just in case there's people from Avon Lake listening, I have to correct you and say from Avon Lake, because if you call us Avon, those are fighting words here. So,
yeah, okay, it's one or the other, right? I gotcha.
Yeah, but it was a fun season here. I'm watching my son and his team play, and something you said before we got going, felt the exact same way, that the season went extremely quick. Now we played, I believe, 11 games, so a little bit shorter, getting to the point where we were, but just the quickness of the season and kind of every week, just thankful for getting that next week. I mean, I can remember the first home game for us was our senior night, or I should say second one, primarily because we just didn't know how many times we were going to get to go out on the field. And so, it's so many things this year that you're thankful for, but at the same time made it go really quick.
Yeah, and we followed suit. We did the same thing. I think our senior night was our third game, just because you didn't know. And the season was so quick. I mean, we did the same thing, 11 games. They pushed it back, I think, 3 or 4 before we started. But every day you came in, it was like you're almost like walking on thin ice. You're tiptoeing. I'm afraid to look at my phone or look at an email or get a phone call from the AD saying we're shut down. So every day was just kind of like you weren't sure, and you were just blessed and thankful to be there, and it really made you appreciate it, right? It was like going to a fancy restaurant and getting that $60 steak. You cut it up into small pieces, and you really, really chew it real slow and savor it. And that's kind of what it was like this season. It was so rewarding because every day you just really, really took in. You felt it. You thought about it. You digested it, and it really was just a real meaningful season. I mean, some seasons are 12, 14, 16 weeks. This 11-week season, it felt like it was 2 weeks. It just flew by. And again, thankful and blessed that we were able to play, because I know a lot of states weren't.
When you look at this, obviously a lot to build on. Anytime you have a season where you get to the top, you win it all, that's certainly something to hang your hat on and to continue to build the program. But I thought what was interesting is, as we were talking before we got started, is that you kind of have identified maybe some things that can be problematic moving forward, or at least some issues you feel like we have to be aware of this and have a plan for it, attack it a little bit because of the changes in the season. And one of those things was just the ability to really be together as a team, that everything this season has changed. A lot of teams, it's true here, there is no locker room. The kids are putting the equipment in the trunk of their car, right? They're there is no hanging out time, being together time. Like those things got severely limited.
Yeah, I think a couple things. Number one was that what you alluded to. We didn't have a locker room all year. I mean, we literally got dressed, before they came. As the weather started to get colder, we actually had a little tent, kind of think like a graduation, had a graduation party, and kids could get dressed in there a little bit. And then we were down in the tunnel, kind of underneath our bleachers there for 2 games. And then as we pursued through the state playoffs, there were still no locker rooms up till the state finals. So you lose all that camaraderie and before practice and after practice, the kids are getting changed and whatnot, and just being a football team. And that's so little things like that. So I think, this going into this next season, that's going to be a big focus of mine, is just building that team chemistry back. And another thing, Keith, too, that is kind of lost is we didn't practice. And again, I'm not sure if every program was like this, but we kept our numbers, we kept our circle as tight as we could. So normally we practice 9 through 12. And for us here, we're the second largest classification. We have about 1,500 boys, or 1,500 in our school, 9 to 12. So about, I don't know, what's that, 700 boys or so. But anyway, we would always practice together, but with COVID, we wanted to keep our circle tight. So our 9th grade was separated on one field. Our 7th and 8th grade was separated on one field. Our JV, so the JV, we actually had to hold, just like, a baseball team would do, a basketball team would do. They would have your JV and your varsity, whereas football, a lot of those JV varsity guys do both, right? But our JV, we had to kind of say, hey, beginning of the year, you're JV. You guys are up on the other field. We'll see you at the end of the season. We couldn't bring them down on Fridays just because of the cross contamination and all that stuff. Nobody knew, right? Because if you had a case or somebody had a case, were they going to take the whole team? And there were so many question marks. So we kept everybody separate. So we literally had 4 different football teams on our campus: the middle school, the 9th grade, the JV, and the varsity. So I'm holding exit interviews as we speak, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And when these JV kids come in, I almost feel bad because, I try to make it up there and show my face once or twice a week, but I wasn't there coaching them. I wasn't there with those guys. And I feel like they were cheated a little bit. So that's a part of it too. Those guys are normally coached by my varsity coaches, so they weren't a part of the team. They weren't there on Friday nights when we were making our championship run. They weren't there seeing how the older guys and the seniors are reacting, when adversity hits on a Friday night, or somebody scores on you, or when the quarterback throws an interception, how does he react when he comes off the field? All those little intangibles that, I think are grown and fostered from a program, especially a successful program that's winning. You lose all that. Those kids maybe were sitting in the stands, but even with all the restrictions this year, a lot of them couldn't even come to the games. So, hopefully they were at home watching it, streaming. So that's another thing that was just, as rewarding as the season was, when you sit back and look back on it, it's like, man, we got some work to do there. And then also probably the final thing is, in some of those games, we played 11, and I think, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 were maybe a little lopsided at times. And in the second half, those guys are getting a lot of playing time. And so those 9th graders and those 10th graders might be playing in that second half of that varsity game, when it might be out of hand a little bit, and they're getting a lot of snaps. And when you add all those games up over the course of a season like this, that's almost another half of a football season. So a lot of things there that we're going to have to really, really work hard on to try to cultivate back into the program and get those guys really involved and make them feel like they're a part of this championship team.
And I know you're still in the process of doing those exit interviews, but it's something I'm sure you've been thinking about a little bit. Probably don't have exactly the plan yet, but what are your initial thoughts on being able to bridge that gap and to make sure that training you missed, those experiences that you missed, just part of being, that culture that, like you said, some of it facing the adversity, etc. How do you build that back in? How do you recover some of what was lost?
Yeah, I mean the culture, the bonding, the team stuff. I think that's easy, right? Because we do that. We do a lot of that. Our program is based on that, and that's easy. So once spring hits and hopefully, we're back to normal here pretty soon, we'll get going and status quo like we always do and start our team activities and really, really try to build that team atmosphere. But the other part, I don't know if you get that back, Keith. That's that junior quarterback that should have been standing on the sidelines, but he was playing JV on Saturdays. You lose that. And I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know how you get that back. I mean, we're going to get after it, and we'll obviously reflect on this team a lot and the experiences that they've had, and maybe some of the adversity that we faced. But I don't know if you do. And my only hope is that if there's some ideas out there, I'd love to hear them. But it's all relative, right? We're all in the same boat, so it's not like we were the only school. I think most of the schools out here around us were like that. But yeah, no, that's something that I think it's just gonna put you back a little bit, and you gotta start over. So,
well, in terms of starting over, that's kind of what's done at this time of the year. You close the book on that previous season, and you start the next one, and you develop your leadership. And for everybody in the country, it's the first time that they're having to kick their off season off with a lot of limitations. This didn't hit us till mid-March. We had established a lot of, this is what we're about. This is how we're going to work. This is how we're developing leadership. And, you're right back into it now with limitations on what you can do in your off-season program. I would be willing to bet that there's a lot of schools that are still not allowed to train together, within their school or with much smaller numbers. So we're facing all of those challenges too for the first time. Any thoughts on how you get this kicked off for your 2021 team?
Yeah, I see from that aspect, we were allowed. So by the end of summer, we were allowed to get into the weight room, but we were in small groups. So we were limited to numbers of 25 or less. So that would be the biggest challenge. Normally in the off season with kids playing other sports, our off season workouts, we usually average about 60 kids, maybe 55, 60 kids. So we'd have to break down into maybe 2 or 3 smaller groups. So from a staffing standpoint, that'll be a little harder on us. We'll have to maybe split up a little bit, but I think that's doable. And I think the kids are used to it. And like before, I think they'd just be happy to get back at it and be able to get into the weight room and work out with their team. And again, I'm hoping things get better. I'm hoping we start that way, then eventually we can get back to normal. But if we can't, then it's kind of the same process we used last year. Small group workouts. Heck, a lot of the Zoom stuff. Everybody said, you can't. It worked out great, right? You were able to Zoom. That's what we did all year. Normally from a football program, on Saturdays we would bring the kids in, just like probably most schools out there, and we'd come in and maybe they'd get a lift, they'd go see the trainer, and then you'd watch film, right? I think most programs have done that. I know some have gotten away from it, but this past year with COVID, we didn't come in once on the weekends, coaches or players. So that's making me look now as the head coach and the program manager. Is that something that moving forward that we would continue to do? All right. So some positives of that are what? Kids can, you're not wearing them out. You're not bringing them in more time than they need to be there. I know my coaches appreciated that. Now we still did our work and met on Zoom on Saturday and Sunday, and you had your things you needed to get done, whether it was offense or defense. But what did we really lose? I guarantee you those kids watched that tape, right? We went through and did voiceovers like you can on Huddle and put notes on. Both coordinators did that, and the kids, we sent that to the kids and they watched it. But what are you really losing when you're not bringing the kids in to watch film on a Saturday morning? It's something that's just what I ask myself. And moving forward, I'm not sure if we'll ever bring the kids in on a Saturday again. So things like that, it's just it's going to make you step back as a coach and say, why do we just do this? Because we've always done that. Another thing that we did this year, and again, not saying it's right, it was just more or less because of COVID, but we were so unsure if we were going to have a season, and it got pushed back. And once it came time that we got to go ahead and we started practicing, even prior to the season, we hardly ever, we never hit and tackle to the ground. I think we spoke about that before. But to that point, we didn't practice in full pads one time this whole year. So we played 11 games, won a state championship, played really good football. We were great tacklers. We were very physical, and we didn't practice in full pads one time all year, Keith. So that's another thing that's like, well, yeah, that was partially spurned on because of COVID, right? Because we didn't want to have to, normally we do the laundry, and then you're talking about, contamination and this and that. So we didn't even do practice pants. We were in girdles the whole time. So moving forward, that's something else that I think that, we might continue to do. So it's kind of neat how you go through those problems, you have those issues, and then maybe moving forward, that might be the new norm.
Right. Well, problems always spark some innovation. And, I think you hit on something important there, right? We are a very tradition-rich sport. The way we do things are a lot of times based on tradition. We've always done it that way. There's not necessarily that push to look at new and different ways, but this was a year where we were forced to do things differently. And I think everybody learned some things. So it's good to hear some of that. I think those are positive things, right? Being able to physically maybe lay off your players a little bit more. And, the results didn't change for you. You were great tacklers. Obviously, the results speak for themselves and what you guys were able to do with the state championship. Looking at, I was interested in watching film and watching film remotely. I know my son still went in on the Saturdays. It was a lot the same, though they were distanced. They might have done it in rooms where they could spread out more, etc. But anything you found that was effective and a little bit different in watching film and giving that feedback and keeping kids engaged while they're actually not in the room going through the previous night's game?
Yeah, I think, and again, we during the week after practice we would watch film, like same thing. We had to limit numbers, and we would go in after practice, and whether we watched that practice or the upcoming opponent. But I think watching film, and again, not all coaches, but I know most of us growing up, you always had that one coach that would you were so afraid to screw up because you knew he would just ream your butt out. And it's embarrassing. You have that peer pressure of your friends and getting yelled at in front of everybody. So I think too, by not being together at times, or at least that initial post-game film review, where a coach is real upset because maybe you missed the block or whatever you did, you're not going to get that now because, you're watching remotely by yourself at home. Now, we're still going to get that message across, right? We're going to put the note into the huddle, and we'd actually did some things there along the way where we took out like the good, the bad, the ugly. You've 10 good plays, 10 bad plays, 10 ugly plays, or whatever it is, and sent that out too. You gotta get it corrected, right? If something's done wrong as a football coach, you got to get it corrected. But I think there is some merit to now those kids aren't afraid to watch it. Maybe they're going to watch it even more and maybe absorb it more because there's not that peer pressure of getting yelled at by coach in front of the whole team, right? I mean, we've all been there. I think coaches nowadays understand that that's not what you're supposed to do, but I'm sure there's still coaches out there that do that. So I think maybe it might be better, right, in the long run, and they're going to actually get more out of it as long as you're, correcting what needs to be corrected. And that was my biggest worry, that, we blocked whatever power wrong, or we couldn't fit up power, whatever it was, game one, and all of a sudden game two, we still don't have it fixed. Well, okay, then you got to figure something out. But we were able to get our problems fixed, and it all worked out for us this past year. And again, moving forward, I think that's what we're going to continue to do.
Yeah, I think when you look at it, feedback is critical, and you're probably right. In a lot of ways, this maybe makes the feedback better, right? It removes maybe some of the emotion. It doesn't necessarily have to be an emotional thing to get it fixed. But a lot of times, especially people sitting in the same room, the kid's uneasy, especially a younger kid who hasn't been through it before, that this removes it. But, to have that feedback is just critical for improvement of the team and really for the culture of the team. I think teams that do feedback and accountability well have very strong cultures.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, end of the day, you got to get it fixed, right? It's how you go about that. It's how, kids are going to make mistakes, right? That's okay. Next play mentality, get it fixed. Don't make the same mistake again. And, I think there's different ways of going about that. And don't always have to do it the way it's always been done, right? I don't know what the cliche or what the saying is, but just because it's always done that way doesn't mean it's right. So I'm kind of a believer in that, and always trying to find the, cutting edge, newer ways of doing things or better ways of doing things. And COVID definitely pushed me a little bit, and pushed all of us, I think, in that direction. And we had to find new ways and creative ways to do things we've always done.
For sure. Well, I know the last time, I don't know if it was the last time or sometime in the last year or so, you and I were talking on the podcast about stemming and pre-snap movement, and you building that into your defensive system. I know that, moving that front along with the disguise were some big things for you here on the defensive side of the ball in your state championship run. Talk to us a little bit about some of those things that you did. And again, for our listeners, I'll link back to that previous podcast with Coach, so you can listen to that one as well. But talk to us a little bit about how that worked out for you.
Yeah, so it's a big thing now, obviously, offensively. These offensive coaches and not even RPOs, but the pre-snap kind of picture that they're seeing, right? All these quarterbacks and coordinators it's all about the pre-snap picture and what are they seeing? What are they getting? They're looking for the grass. They're looking for, is it one high? Is it two high? And all based on what they see and how the defensive line is going to kind of funnel them into the play call or into the choice the quarterback or the offense coordinator is going to make, is depending on what call they have, right? Or whether it's a run pass option or a screen pass option or a screen run option or throw this way or throw this way based on one high or two high, right? All these pre-snap things are funneling these quarterbacks into what to do with the football. So in return, we did a big kind of off-season kind of focus on pre-snap stemming, which is nothing revolutionary by any means. But, I think the worst thing to do is sit in one front and stay in that front the whole time. That's why, the 3-3 stacks and the mint front and the tight front and all these things are so in vogue now, because they're constantly moving those front guys and they're coming from different spots. So we're an even front. Like we play an even front, usually an over front, but, we did really focused on stem in the front. So that was one thing that, we really did. And that I thought that helped us tremendously, whether it's pre-snap movement or especially post-snap movement. But on the second and third levels now, the second level, we really work on, that field backer, that nickel guy to the field. That's a guy that offenses study, right? Is he in the box? Is he out of the box? Is he inside leverage of 2 or outside leverage of 2? All his alignment, especially with all these, spread offenses that are taking over all levels of football, his alignment, a lot of plays dictates where that football is going to go, whether it's like I said, an inside zone with a stick attached to it, or a bubble with an outside zone the other way, or maybe now they're going to read that Mike now, and is he in the box? Is he out of the box? We're going to read him pre-snap, post-snap. So all these different pre-snap pictures, we focused on being able to change that look, and then taking us to the third level. Another big off-season issue, or not issue, but focus for us was the shell. And again, this is nothing revolutionary. This is things that defensive coaches have talked about for years. But we really, really, really tried to hold that too high shell every single snap. And at the end of the day, we were a quarters defense, but we ran 500, 400 and some snaps of football of defense. I think we were only in quarters when I did the numbers the other day, 30% of the time. But we tried to show that quarter shell every single snap. And I think not just from a coverage standpoint, right? We played some post safety, we played some split safety stuff, whether it was quarters or cover 2. We did some cover 1 and some hot coverage stuff, which is like a cover 3. But more so, again, you show that picture to the quarterback, you show that picture to the offense, they're thinking too high. And just about every offensive coordinator out there, if you ask them if there's 2 safeties, are you going to run the football or throw the football? And I'd say 90% of them are going to say we're going to run the football. And if you can't run the football, there's 2 safeties. Well, then you should probably, figure something else out to do, because that's kind of their mindset. So we really, really wanted to show that too high structure, and then post snap being able to add our extra guy or extra 2 guys to the box, and maybe force them into a run. So again, just all it's cat and mouse, it's chess, right? These offensive coaches want the pen last. Well, as defensive guys, I think we need to take that back. And the more we can, present them with a picture that is false, present them with a picture of, hey, there might only be 5 or 6 guys in the box pre-snap, but post-snap, we're going to get another 1 or 2 or 3 in there pretty darn quick. I think is very, very advantageous to a defense, because ultimately, that's what these offenses are trying to do. They're trying to go fast. They're trying to package all of their football plays. And if we can, especially if the quarterback's making the decision and we can fool him pre-snap, or even the OC in the box, we can fool them pre-snap, then I think we're able to gain the advantage back, at least partially, on the defensive side of the ball.
Coach, it's interesting in looking at this. So you go back to last season offensively. I remember reading a stat, heading into it was late in the playoffs in the NFL. Could have been heading into the Super Bowl, but the San Francisco 49ers moved on 73% of their offensive plays, right? So that movement and really not letting somebody get a beat on what you're going to do was so important to their success on offense. And I've seen that. I've seen a trend in more and more teams now who used to be static and line up 2x2, 3x1, and adding motion in and wanting to learn about how to add motion into some of their high tempo offenses, etc. But you brought up a stat, and you had read something, and you mentioned Brandon Staley, who's the defensive coordinator for the Rams. Quick story: I had the opportunity to be on the opposite side from Brandon for a season. He was defensive coordinator at John Carroll, and I was at BW, and their defense was just outstanding. They kicked our butts that night. But he's a really good defensive mind, and I think you said somewhere around 80%, the most in the NFL, they're lining up in disguising everything that they're going to do, a lot like what you talked about. I think when you look at those concepts, I see so much now just being done to really combat what the offense is doing. We're trying to conflict a defender, and to now when maybe that guy's not even going to be there, or someone's going to roll down in his place, whatever it might be, the picture really starts to change, and now things that seemed like easy to pick on a defense start to get evened out a little bit. You guys have the chalk back.
Yeah, it's crazy how it just keeps it's secular, just keeps going and going, and eventually I think it's football in 10 years might end up going back to just calling plays again, because we're all trying to fool each other. I mean, you're an offensive guy, Keith, and I used to be on the offensive side of the ball years ago, and you always heard, like, all right, 1 high or 2 high. If it's 1 high, well, then you want to work weak. If it's 2 high, then you want to work strong, right? If it's if there's 1 safety there, well, it's either cover 3 or cover 1, and if it's 2 safeties, it's quarters, or it's cover 2, some version of 2, and that kind of let us down, kind of what I was saying, funneled you into what you were supposed to do with the ball as a quarterback, right? I mean, there's a lot of offenses I think still do that. I know I have some friends that coach football in Texas, and they throw the ball a ton, and that quarterback, his primary look every single play is how many safeties are there and where are they at, what depths are the corners at. So they're studying that stuff, and based on where they're aligned, how many there are, that's where they're going with the football. So if you know that, and you can change that picture or confuse that picture a little bit, then I think you can gain an advantage there. Especially, I think there's so many offenses that are doing this now, where they're trying to package the plays, which is good. In a perfect world, it works, and it works quite a bit. But as a defensive coach, shame on you if you're sitting in the same front, if you're not moving pre-snap or post-snap, if your safeties are static at maybe 10 yards, and post-snap they're staying there. Your corners, whatever their alignment is, you're not allowing them to move and change and adjust, then you're asking for it, in my opinion, because these offenses are too good. These coaches are too good that based on how you align, they're going to pick you apart. So I think we need to present them with different pictures, and I think that's a cheap, very inexpensive way to play, or at least to teach on the defensive side of the ball. I don't care what you're running, but you can teach some pre-snap. I think you had a guy on, Keith. I listened to a podcast a while back, I think he used animals or something goofy, like bunch of different animals. And he had like the one guy that had like 60 different fronts. You could probably
Nick Davis Nick Davis from Rolls Holman. Yeah. He had everything. Yeah. He had bugs. He had animals. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was intrigued by that. And I mean, maybe to that extent, right? He could move every single person, but I mean, to along those lines, you got to be able to do some of that to, I think, get that chalk back on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah. Now Nick has engineers in some of the smartest ones in the country. So, although I think he said, they come to him and they don't necessarily have football smarts, but he does a lot with a little and he themes it all up. Now, in thinking of the too high structure, I know, going back to my days at BW, in the OAC, there were so many teams that were quarters, and I think we primarily saw two things. We saw quarters and a lot of teams going 3 under 3 deep with a rotation of one of those safeties. Now, what we started to get really good at, because you couldn't count on, just 2 safeties and that was telling you what was going to happen, was finding the indicator in the defense. And it's something I've actually worked with, some high school quarterbacks here the last several years, in just teaching them that just because you see too high, that's not going to tell you the picture, that there's going to be a safety. Ultimately, too, I think when you're at the high school level, some of this is to cover up, like make sure you're not out of position because you're trying to disguise, but a safety who tells you exactly what he's going to do. And a lot of times I find it to be, this isn't true 100%, but a lot of times I find it to be that boundary safety, right? And so we started to look at and just study, he's a high safety. We can't stop there. Where is he? Is he inside the hash? Is he outside the hash? When he's inside the hash, what is he doing? When he's, 12 yards deep versus 15 yards deep, what is he doing? And so for these quarterbacks I was working with and looking at their opponents, and we would just do this every week. We'd go through this exercise. We would find those indicators to teach them exactly what that rotation was going to be. And then when that's the key, you can put your eyes there post-snap to confirm. So what I'm leading into is that not all disguise is actually disguise, right? So do you have any things you're teaching your guys to maybe keep from becoming an indicator for that quarterback or for the offensive coordinator, and maybe who's calling it from up top?
Yeah, so I think the way we do it, I keep them all separate, right? So it's basically four portions. It's our defensive line, it's our field backer, right? The 2 in the box backers in our structure, they pretty much are static for the most part. It's our corners and it's our safeties, and I allow them movement within the call to do what they want and to change it up as they want. That way, it's not just, hey, I'm going to give you three different pre-snap movements, and that way, like yourself or the coach on the opposing side could break that down. And you're spot on, Keith. There are a couple guys that if you really focus on that's the ticket. But the more I can keep them independent of one another, so maybe on this one the boundary safety is cheating down, but our field backer is wider because he that's his cheat on that play. And then the snap of the ball, they both move. And then maybe the next one, the boundary safety's down, but the field backer's tight now. So that's a whole different picture. I think it's a lot of the same mindset as an offense. When we study offense, and I know that you run power and the back's always opposite, and you have that tendency when the back's opposite, they're running power, but when he's on the same side, it's counter. Well, that's pretty easy to break down. But then when you have teams that allow that running back to align independently on his own, and maybe most of the time he runs power opposite, but then sometimes he runs same side power, or same thing with that sniffer. The fullback is an offense, when he runs power, he's always tight and inside tight on the guard. But then all of a sudden, 2 or 3 times just to break that tendency, he runs power from more of a wing alignment. That's what makes it really difficult when those are independent of each other. So that's what we kind of try to do on defense. We allow kind of those 4 different areas to kind of, they have 3 or 4 things they can do within their base alignment to disguise it, and that way they're never always tied together. And I think it's really hard to get a bead on what we're doing.
Structurally, when you're looking at that, to me, It's something I've constantly studied, whether it's been on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball. You as the coach, and I remember talking to Dan Gonzalez from Texas about this, right? That the structure you put together for your players is so important that it's almost, you have to look at it as a responsibility to your players that it's sound. And we mentioned as an example, Nick Davis at Rose Holman in how he put that together. So it has to be clear, it has to be concise, it has to be very teachable. The language, I think there has to be those learning cues within it, etc. When you're looking at the structure, how you put this together, and what you're talking about is something very dynamic. For a defense to be able to do all that kind of movement and disguise, not necessarily something that's easy on me as the offensive coordinator, and certainly not easy on the players who have to dissect that right out on the field. So it starts with you, though, and on your side, creating that sound structure. How do you do that for your guys? How do you group those things together so that it gets communicated clearly, that you don't end up with people out of position, assignment busts, etc.?
Yeah, I think that's that's day one for us. Defensively, every day we do a formation alignment assignment period. We're big time formation based on how we align, but that's all built in from day one. When we start in April, May, and we were able to get outside, building that structure, they know their alignment, right? And based on different factors that the offense presents us, our defensive front, they have their base alignment. We have different ways we can have them aligned, but based on, there's multiple things, Keith, just like, you study defense, we study, like, where's the back aligned? And again, nothing revolutionary, but is he deep? Is he even? Where's the fullback aligned? Is he tight? Is he wide? So all these things might tell my nose guard, well, based on this, we want to align in a G, or a 2I. Maybe based on this alignment, we want to be in a shade. And then same thing for my defensive ends. Is the back to me? Is he away from me? Is the fullback to me? Is he away from me? So certain times we know, well, hey, if the back's to me, I'm probably going to get red. So I'm probably going to get a veer block. So I probably want to be really heavy on that tackle so I can get my hands on him and surf. And depending on what your technique is, right? But in our structure, that's what we would do. Same thing with the backers. Is the number 2 receiver on the ball or off the ball, right? That tells me a lot from a defensive perspective. It's a safety. If he's on the ball, I know probably 9 times out of 10, offensive coaches do things for a reason. If that dude's on the ball, I'd bet a lot of money he's probably going vertical, and I'll probably bet he's not running the bubble, right? So there's so many tells that you can break down as a defense or break down on the offense from a defensive perspective, that the more and more that we build a lot of that in. So yeah, here's our restruct. Day one, this is how we're going to line up. But within that alignment, you have these 3 or 4 things you can do on any single play to disguise. And then based on game plan, this is how we want you to align when that ball is snapped based on what you see. Is the number 2 receiver tight? Is he a little bit wider? Is he on the numbers? Is he inside the numbers? On the ball, off the ball? There's so many little tells there that we're going to then in turn try to teach our kids to align to, put us in an advantageous position to get done what we need to get done.
Coach, I know you've put a lot of this together, and you're sharing it on CoachTube, and no secret. I think everybody sees that coaching coordinator. We've partnered with CoachTube. I'm really excited about that company, number one, because of what it does for coaches in empowering them to do what you're doing, to share the knowledge you have as a coach, and to not get caught up in what was traditionally the market, meaning that there were production companies out there who would have you come out and shoot some videos and then you were done with it. But at the same time, they had your intellectual property, and you might make 10 or 15% out of it. CoachTube, as I got into it and learned about it, really empowers the coach that, as a coach, if you're willing to share what you have and you have good stuff, you're out there making 80% of it. You're getting the lion's share on CoachTube. So you've shared your stuff there. I think it's a tremendous platform for coaches, both on the guys who are willing to share, as well as for those coaches out there who are looking to learn. I think, there's really, because the coach can share and continue putting things up, there's no boundaries. It wasn't reliant on him just being on one trip and things got shot, that the coach can continue to put things out there. I think you have 3 or 4 courses already and plans for more, but talk to us a little bit about your thoughts just on the platform as well as what you put out there.
Yeah, Coach Tip's tremendous, and I think a lot of us, I mean, with COVID and everything, it spurred us into going online and studying and figuring out ways to learn, because there weren't clinics anymore. So Coach Tube's really blown up. Like you said, I think I got 4 courses on there now. I'm looking to put another 5 or 6 for sure. Now that we finished our season, that's number 1 on my list. So I'm looking forward to doing that, just because I've learned so much through that platform. And it's so easy. You click in it, you can watch it anywhere you want, your computer, your phone, your iPad. And then the best thing I like is you can build a relationship with that coach, that you can contact them, reach out to them on Twitter, whatever. And if you have any questions, I've had awesome success reaching out to some guys and just building relationships. But yeah, I got 3, I think, stopping the run, stopping the pass, and then basics of the 4-3 defense. And then I put another one out there a couple months ago, some of our 3x1 adjustments. And like you said, I'm looking to put some more out there. It's an awesome platform. I really love it. And again, easy to do, easy to share, and I think easy to learn. If you can do a simple little, Zoom video, it's a great way to do it. And like you said, I'm willing to share what the little bit that I know, but I think I've gained so much more from it than I've been able to give.
And we will put the links to all the different courses that Coach has put together in our show notes. You can find the show notes just in the app, whatever app you use it in. There should be a live link in the description. If not, you could go to coachingcoordinator.com and check out our show notes on this episode there. We'll have the links to it as well. Coach, I'm really excited that what you guys were able to do this year. Have loved watching your program. You and I, it's been a while. Usually we run into each other in the summer sometime with baseball. I know we didn't do this past year, and it's man, the time's going quick, because my son next year, he's in college, and we've been seeing each other for a few years now. Every summer, it's always at that same tournament right here in Northeast Ohio. But it's we'll have to find that opportunity to catch up live in person again. But certainly, congratulations to you and your team. And, best of luck here in 2021 as you guys get ready to start a new journey on a road to a championship.
Yeah, appreciate it, Keith. Always good to see you. Let's make that happen for sure. And, thanks again for having me on. I love what you do. I mean, this is the lifeblood of coaches. And it's not just high school football coach. I have a lot of buddies that are big time college coaches at Power 5 that listen to this. I mean, it's a great way I cut the grass. I'm driving my car to work. I mean, this is my go-to podcast. So appreciate all you do, man.
Absolutely. And for coaches out there, give them your Twitter handle, Coach.
Yeah, I'm at Coach Kasper. So COACH and then Kasper, KASPER. Yeah, pretty active on there. Again, very, very willing to talk ball. Love learning from all the great coaches out there.
Thank you again for listening to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. Please, if you are enjoying the podcast, head over to iTunes or Spotify and click 5-star for a rate. If you have a minute, write a review. It really helps the podcast. Check out our new home for the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. That's at coachandcoordinator.com. And follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski.